sun's in my eyes. Hi, we're back again. Just wanted to do a wee intro into our next podcast, which you are about to see in the following. I never going to be able to do like transition stuff in the next hour. And you'll also be able to listen to it on our other streaming platforms, which include Apple, Spotify, all of the above. This week we are speaking to Sam, who I met in Egg. A couple months. It would be more than a couple months ago now. Just got started chatting to her about her business and We Wear Boost, which you will be able to follow in the comments below. Again, don't know where I'm pointing. And we'll obviously share it on our Instagram. But it was really, really exciting. We didn't speak for too long, but it was enough to want to stay in contact. And you'll probably see in like the next like hour of listening to how charismatic and infectious Sam is, and why her company is so important in trying to change the game, especially in something that has been so stagnant for so long and is something that deserves the time and investment into. So yeah, it felt like we were having pretty much a pep talk, but it was great for us to be able to speak to someone who's further on in the business than we are, and all of our hard work is now paying off. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for everyone that has listened so far. This has been so much fun. So I really, really hope you enjoy watching and listening to this one as much as we enjoyed doing it. So thank you.
Oh yeah, countdown and everything.
I know, right? It's very intense. That we've never done this thing before, Sam. So like, bear with us with this whole thing.
So welcome to GLORIAH'S sex tape, Sam. I guess we should like start with you, maybe just introducing yourself, what you do, and just a bit of background.
Yeah, okay. I'm Sam Jackman. I'm the co-founder and director. Sometimes people say I'm the CEO of Boost Innovations. I don't tend to say CEO because I find it, but I run Boost Innovations Limited, and we are a company based in Cornwall, and we make boobs mostly for women who've had breast cancer or for people who want to create shape and contour under their clothing.
And how did you first get into that in the first place? What brought you to start making boobs?
17 years ago, my mum had breast cancer treatment, and she had one of her breasts removed, and she's quite larger breasted, so she was left with one, and she had the other one taken off as part of her breast cancer treatment. And she was given one of these. They're good in their own way, they do a job, but actually she was as she was getting better and she regained her health and everything was going really well with her recovery, she was sort of running around after my son, who was a toddler, and she was like just going all over the place. And she found that these were just really hot and heavy and sweaty, and as she moved around, it kind of would flop away from her body, even if it was in a pocketed bra, it would kind of be a bit floppy. And so she just was like, I'm not going to wear that anymore. That's just ridiculous. So I used to go on the internet and I'd try and find different things for her, and I ordered loads of different things for her to see if we can find something that worked better. And they were all calm, and they were all pretty much the same, or they all kind of looked very similar. They might be slightly lighter, or like a teddy bear fluff boob, but that's too light, and then it would end up like over here on her shoulder, and she'd be like, oh, my boobs move. So there was like, there's kind of like nothing in between of what she really wanted. And then one day she said to me, why does it even have to look like that anyway? And that was the key thing that got me thinking, because before I was like, oh, she's just moaning about it. It's all great and she's just moaning. But actually, the day she said, why does it even have to look like that? I'm not trying to replace the flesh that I've lost. I just want something to stop my clothes twiddling about. And I just want something to give me shape under my clothes, because my clothes don't fit properly. And I thought, yeah, she's right. Nobody is beige. Everybody's skin tone varies so much and so differently. Like, why did they bother to do it like that? Well, I don't really understand why they did it like that. And I started to think about it, and then I went to work one day, and I bumped into a colleague of mine at the time, and we were talking about it, and I said, have you ever thought about this thing? And she's like, no. And then we just started thinking about it, and in the end we founded Boost together, and started to explore it, and we came up with a different design solution. We now make breast forms here in Cornwall, and they look like this. So it's open structured, it's light, it's area. We do not do them in anything remotely skin coloured because we just don't think it has to be. We just don't. You're not replacing the baby loss. You're just putting something in your bra to give you a bit of shape under your clothing. It's not heavy. It's usually between 50 and 75% lighter than one of these in the equivalent size. It's airy. You can wash them really easily. You could wear them in the swimming pool. And what we really like about it is that you can just match it to your underwear, match it to your mood, or it's not necessarily medical. We want this to be something that people choose to wear and don't get reminded all the time of some, shitty cancer. It's really difficult. Cancer is the most disempowering thing, particularly that you can go through. Like any cancer treatment, it's really hard and lots of stuff is done to you. And we just wanted to find a way that we could give choice and self-expression and a little bit of joy or positivity after breast cancer. So we can do things like this. And this is a glittery boob. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see it. Yeah. There's one in teal with glitter in it. So we can do glittery boobs and we can do colourful and we can, subtle pinky colours as well. But we want to just make something that has a different connotations for the people that choose to wear this kind of product.
Oh, interesting. But I guess just for people who are listening maybe only on podcasts, when Sam was holding up what a booby used to look like, it's basically like a horrendous big fleshy
chicken fillet.
Jelly chicken fillet. Yeah, like nobody's boobs, like it's not really resonant to what you have. And the alternative is this really aesthetic, beautifully designed, lightweight, kind of aerodynamic looking mold, which even just in a practical sense, I was thinking, as you were saying, to do with the weight, packing it, like say you're going on holiday or you're traveling with hand luggage, like that fits so much more easily, discreetly into your hold all and stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't show up as a liquid in the airport scanners either, so it should be more subtle if you go through the and things like that. Yeah, we've had an invitation once to try it out, but we've never got around to it. But we're going to have a go at doing that at some point, is putting them through airport scanners and different security checks and see how they come out. But sometimes these get picked up as liquid, and the silicone gel prosthesis, the stuff inside can be identified as liquid, in which case it has been known, and women have told us that they've had to pull it out in the middle of an airport and show the airport security man what it is, and that's obviously not it's not really ideal, is it? But with ours, I mean, one of the things with ours, because it is a pretty pattern on the outside, it's open structured, it's not a replication of the body part. It is an accessory, a shaper that we'd hope people would choose to wear and feel like they've had that choice, that they don't feel like it's a necessity, but they're being chosen to, they can choose what color they want, and they can choose what finish they want, and they can choose how it looks. Then if you were going swimming or you were going to the gym and you took it out to go and have your shower and it was just on the side in a public change room, nobody would really be curious necessarily. People wouldn't really necessarily know exactly what it was or why you might have it, and it just helps you to, I think it helps to bring your confidence back a little bit. Or women have told us they feel more confident wearing this type of product because it's less medicalized, and it's not like saying, oh hey, I've had breast cancer, everybody, look. It's much more subtle than that, because it's a completely different type of product.
And I think that's also, I guess, what we see with a lot of when women have a medical dimension to a kind of sexualized or intimate area, and a man designs it, it tends to be very functional, even down to, like lubricants for older women, KY jelly. It's just like blue, medically, like it's not, there's nothing nice and luxurious about it. And you've really addressed that problem so well.
Yeah, and when we were starting out, I have to say, we didn't have any prototypes, and we used to find it really difficult to communicate to people the kind of paradigm shift, the step change that we were proposing with our products. So we knew what we wanted in our heads, but we didn't have money, we didn't have investment, we didn't have any prototypes to go with. So we had to try and explain this to people. So we do presentations and we'd show people things and whatever. And in the end, it was so hard to explain. So I said, look, we need to think about a different type of product that has had that paradigm shift, has already shown a product that's personal for women can be redesigned in this kind of way, the way we are doing with the breast form. And we decided to talk about sex toys for women, because actually that's something that people realise. So when Ann Summers, particularly when the Ann Summers brand started to redesign, so sex toys could be beige, willy shaped things, you know, that look a bit like a willy, but aren't necessarily a willy, fleshy kind of, you know exactly what I mean. But when you look at the Ann Summers range, and then you've got purple and you've got glitter and you've got really shapely and beautiful things, that if it was just, sometimes if it was in your drawer, then people wouldn't necessarily know what it was for. It's just a like really funky looking thing. It's not a fake willy, because that's not what a woman would want. So we actually did use that on occasion, not all the time obviously, but on occasion as an analogy for the kind of design step change we wanted to produce. And we know it's not the same thing, and it really isn't. It's very different things, because you're wearing this product for obviously for different reasons, and you're using the product differently. But it is an intimate product for women that really needed to have it challenged, and that's what we wanted to do. And actually we did say, look, the only thing we could think of that also had this kind of massive shift in how design thinking has reinvented it is that kind of the sex toy kind of market, where actually the way it looks and the prettiness and the design of it and the desirability and all those things have been really carefully thought out. And yes, this is very different. Quite obviously it's very different. But actually that helped us to explain that design change.
I feel like that was so rings true with what we are trying to do with Gloria as well. Like when it comes to like lubricant, all that sort of thing, like it's just so not attractive. It's not what you want to buy. And it's also not like good for women. So yeah, we totally, absolutely like know exactly how you feel when it comes to like that sort of market.
Because you mentioned like when you first started, like you're in that almost like chicken and egg phase where you have the idea and you want to get funding to take it forward, but you don't have the prototype to get the funding. So it'd just be like interesting to chat about how you managed to get, because I think that's where a lot of startups get stuck in this very, very early stage where you don't have the money to get the money in a weird way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, really hard. It's really tricky in those early days. We utilised an accelerator programme through the Design Council in London, and we were very lucky enough to get a place on that programme. But you do have to apply and you have to put yourselves out there. And I think you need to be brave to emphasise the ambition for your product and the market needs. So if you know your market and you've got a solid evidence base, it's okay not to have the actual product prototype or not to have that quite yet, because there might be ways that you can still secure funding. So when I'm talking to people about funding, I've learned over the years that what really matters is your narrative, your strong narrative, and de-risking your narrative for your funders. So if you don't have the product prototype, you need to make sure that you're looking for those early stage accelerator programs. And there are a few. I mean, there's not masses, but there are a few. And look at what the funders are after and see if what you want to do aligns with their objectives. And if you can find that kind of starting point, then you're on to a winner. I mean, otherwise it is really difficult, and we have done all sorts of different ways of funding it, but a lot of the time over the last couple of years, the company has just been funded by me either applying for grant funding, and this was before the product was launched, or just working my ass off in other jobs and occasionally so that I could pay for things. I think that's mostly how you kind of have to do it at times. I mean, we did have an accelerator to begin with, start off the initial ideas, but that didn't get anywhere near the route to market that we needed to achieve. It just pushed us a little. So yeah, it is really hard work.
You always want it enough, don't you? And like believe in the fact that what you're doing is like going to change something for the women that are out there, like the target that you're trying to meet, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think because you also have the personal link with your mum and stuff, that's really, you can see like the passion that comes through in you within that. And I remember when we were chatting earlier in the week, you said that you've literally been working like 3 jobs at some point just to keep it going, which was amazing.
Yeah, over the lockdowns, particularly when I was at home, I was working. I had a salary job for 3 days a week, and I was doing freelance stuff on top of it. And then I was running Boost as well and preparing to get that investment.
Wow.
We didn't really get capital investment. We secured our investment deal in January 2022, and just bear in mind that we registered our company in April 2018. So it's taken a long time to get the company to a level where investors could invest, but also to secure all those expenses, to secure the intellectual property, to make sure that all our patents are in, and they are, as our product is a patented product, to follow all of those procedures. And it was just me. We didn't employ anybody. We just had subcontractors here and there when I was able to afford people, and that was it. January, when I was lucky enough to get some investment from the British Design Fund, and we've been able to, I'm now a staff member of my own company, and I have 2 part-time employees. Chris, who's been with us from the beginning and is the kind of engineering brains behind this. So he's been with us as a subcontractor from the very beginning, because he made this for us and sort of helped to design it, and really took what we had in mind and brought it into a manufacturable product, which was just amazing. And now he's now on a salary with me, so that's really great to have him here, seeing as he's been there from the beginning really, and done so much to get the products up and running. And then we've got a new team member called Marie, who's going to be full-time, hopefully, when she's graduated over this summer, and she's part-time at the moment with us. So it's nice to be growing in the right direction, but it's taken a hell of a long time. And it does, and you have to expect that, I think.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really important, well, for us as well, like, it's an important thing that we have to remember, because I'm sure you felt exactly the same way when you first started, and you had this whole idea and these inspirations and everything, and you were just like, I just want it to happen, like, now. Like, my idea is great, like, the women need it now, like, how long is this going to take? Like, yeah, I can only imagine.
I think the patents were the hardest, because we knew that the product worked. We'd done some user testing, we knew it worked, we knew it was really cool, we knew it would be amazing, but we couldn't, it took about a year and a half to get the patents approved, and you can't sell it before that, you can't get it out there before that, so you're just in limbo waiting for the intellectual property stuff to come through, and all that time it's costing you money, so those are the more difficult to get things sorted, but you need to do that, you need to invest that time. My tip is to really think about your intellectual property and your branding and your brand awareness and protecting your brand and your innovation, because as soon as it's out there, it's fair game. You need to make sure you have a legal team around you, a financial team that you can rely on if and when you'll need them, because you will, as soon as it goes out there. So it's worth investing and taking that time. I wouldn't feel like I could have rushed it. It wouldn't have happened any quicker.
Say for anybody who, because we'll have people who understand patents and IP and people who don't. So just as a super high level, if you could just sum up like why a patent is so important, just for anybody who's listening who might be thinking, why do I need that?
So most people probably wouldn't need a patent, to be fair. Most people wouldn't. It has to be a really significantly new invention, and ours is. So it was able to secure a patent. And you do need design registrations and all the and trademarks and the other stuff that goes along with running a business. But mostly it's to keep your brand integrity and to protect your innovation and what makes you unique. Because we have been the first in the world that we know of to create this kind of product. And we wanted to make sure that we could retain that as our unique selling point. So a patent means that anybody else in the UK selling anything similar would be infringing our patent, and legal action could be taken against them. So we're the only people that could make these and sort of sell them, unless we supply them to other people and we give permission to supply them. So we also manufacture these ourselves. They're not made in China or anything, because we have a really eco-conscious kind of ethos. So we're trying to make sure that there's a low waste process and all that kind of stuff. So having the patents was really important to us, because we wanted to retain that integrity of what we were doing, and that was vital. So that's why the patents might matter. Do get legal advice from whoever you're working with, they will be able to help you. And if you need some support, I would recommend that you always, businesses and startups, to speak to your local universities, because if you're working on something really cool and really interesting, universities are always keen to supply researchers or to put some effort into that, potentially where it might be patentable, or there might be some intellectual property they could support with or share with. And that can make a big difference. There might be ways that they can help you with an innovation, even if it's just with a bit of advice.
Did you, beforehand, Sam, what did you do before you did all this? Where?
Yeah, completely different. So I worked in education. I was a teacher for a long time, and I worked in education for a bit. And then from education, I went to work in museums and heritage, and I was working in some museums in the Southwest to lead on their engagement with young people and their career development pathways and stuff like that. So I worked in those kind of settings, and that's where I was when we started to set up Boost, and I started to sort of work on it in my spare time and evenings. And then obviously during the pandemic, my job title was the creative business advisor for Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, and I was actually working, instead of just the museum I was employed in, I was working with all the museums around Cornwall and sort of going around and seeing them and supporting them. And in the pandemic, I was able to do all of that remotely, which was really good. And that was and then the other 2 days a week, I was doing freelance work in arts and heritage, really. So clients who are asking me to support them to write a heritage lottery application or an Arts Council England application, or to support them with a fundraising strategy or how to run their organisation better. And I was working on that. But yeah, I did not ever leave school and think I'm going to start a business. I have not done an MBA, and I have no business qualifications whatsoever.
I think it kind of goes to show for us who are fields as well, how it is possible to be able to move into something completely different. University doesn't define you or anything like that. That is quite, I think, an important message that I'm sure you stand behind as well, that we found.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what is more important is your business, and you need to know it. I mean, you won't get funding if you don't. That's about your strong narrative. You need to know your business. You need to be really secure that you know what you're doing. And that takes a little bit of guts and a little bit of determination and a little bit of being able. How much am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
I don't know if you've listened to any of the ones beforehand, Sam, but we have we go all out.
I was going to say, it does take a little bit of bullshit occasionally. You have to sometimes you have to make it till you make it, really, don't you? Just put yourself out there, because if you really believe in your thing, then you sometimes have to do that. And I think if it's not about your qualifications or your background, it's just your personality. And I think that's the most important thing. Are you going to thrive? When it gets really hard, and when I love my job the best, it's when it's really hard, when there's a really big problem that I need to solve, when it's really, and then I'm like, oh, bring it on. I can kick that ass. I can do that. I will find a way to make that work. And then that's when I feel at my best, when there's pressure and when there's stuff going on, and I just need to pull it out of the bag, because I'm just that kind of person. I just really like that. I thrive on that. I like the challenge. I like to I should say, I know where it comes from, that in me. I know where it comes from. Do you want me to tell you a little bit of a personal story about what happened to me when I was a teenager? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Absolutely,
yeah?
Absolutely.
Okay, so when I was a teenager, when I was 17, and I was trying to do my A-levels, and I really wanted to go to university because nobody in my family had ever been to university before. And I was diagnosed with a health condition, and it's called adult onset Still's disease. And I was registered as a disabled person, and I couldn't walk, and I was had to use walking aids, and social services came to the house and put all these things, sort of things for old people in the house, so that I could actually move about the house and stuff, because I couldn't. It was really bad. So what it is an autoimmune disease where your body attacks itself. Now I still have that. I still have that condition, but I've learned to manage it. And it's not in remission now, but it has been in and out of remission, and it's never been as bad as it was when I was first diagnosed when I was 17, 18. So I had this, and I used to go to appointments like with social services or with, you know, medical assessments with all these people. And they used to say they'd always usually be a medical professional. They were usually men, older men, and they usually sit there and they're very knowledgeable and very wonderful people and very kind, you know, kind to me. But they used to sit there and say, you're never going to be able to work. You're never going to be able to work. You're disabled. You're a disabled person. You've got this health condition for your life, and you're never going to be able to work. And you'll never, you won't be able to go to university when you plan. You'll need at least 2 or 3 years, and you won't be able to go to university. And I was desperate. I really wanted to go. You won't be able to take your place. You'll have to tell them you won't take your place, and it's going to be 2 or 3 years. You're not well enough to do this, you're not well enough to do that, you won't be able to do this, you won't be able. And that's what I used to hear from these people, from these medical professionals. That's what they used to say a lot to me as a 17, 18-year-old girl. My mum would be either in the room, and sometimes she'd stand right behind their heads, like she'd walk around the room as if she's just sort of, and she'd stand right behind their heads, and she'd go, walk out of the room, and my mum would go, bullshit. That's bullshit. You don't need to know. Do what you want. And that was great, because then for me, when I'm at working and I'm doing something that I love and I'm running this business, sticking 2 fingers up to all those people all that time who said, you won't be able to work and you're a disabled person and you won't. And my mum, who was there all the time going, nah, don't listen to that. That's a load of rubbish. You do whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter. You just do what you want to do anyway. And so I think that sometimes when I'm working really hard or when it feels really exciting or there's a lot of pressure, I actually enjoy it because it makes me feel like I can overcome things, because I feel like I can, because I have been, and I like that, and I like that feeling. And when I've succeeded, or even if I failed a bit, but I've got through it somehow by the skin of my teeth, something's happened and I've got through it.
Yeah.
At the end of it, I'm just like, yes, I feel really good that I had that experience, because the whole experience of working and running my own business was something that I was always basically told, no, you won't be well enough to do any of these things.
That drive is like, I suppose, something that you can't like bring from anywhere. Like that comes from like being with those experiences. I suppose that like brings us on to, well, your experience when it comes to like obviously creating something which is just for women. And I suppose that then cuts out like half of the population, as they would like to say.
But actually, sometimes we do really support transgender customers. We also get requests from people who are drag artists. So I can't say that we like to say that, you know, we like to gender our products specifically. We don't like to gender our products specifically, just in case, you know, because that's fair. If you want to create a shape under your clothing, then that's up to you. You know, that's great.
It can be so personalised because it literally can be for anyone and everyone. It's such a great ethos behind the business. Also, your mum sounds like a great woman.
Yeah. Yeah, she's a bit of an ass kicker, yeah, and that's it. So when we started doing this company, when we were in like 2018 and we started setting up the company, like she used to like come into my house and just be like, have you done it yet? And you'd be like, no, you know, there's all this stuff that you need to do before you can launch your product. And she's like, get on with it then. Like, where's my new boob? Where's my new boob? Like all the time. And so like there wasn't at a certain point, there wasn't really an option where you could kind of back out or go, oh, I don't really want to do this anymore. It's a bit too scary and it costs a lot of money. You kind of had to do it because my mum was there all the time going, well, where's my boob then? Come on, get it done, you know, that kind of thing. So
I love it.
I should also say, because people ask this a lot, my mum is very well. She has not had any reoccurrences from her cancer that she had all those years ago. She's very well, she's very healthy, and she's still, we live very near each other, so she's still here quite often. And my mum and dad are packing and the posting and the, you know, the general busybody stuff here in the office. So, yeah,
I love that. I love that. That's great. We were wanting to know, like, obviously with this sort of thing and creating a business which is like targeting women, non-binary, trans. The when it comes to like male investors, all that sort of thing, like they are obviously like a massive hurdle. It's probably the best way to put it that you have to overcome. Do you think, or it depends? What is your experience with that? Like, very curious.
It's hard. It's hard for them to understand sometimes the problem that you're trying to solve, because they don't have the experience of that problem. And I think it's difficult. And we do know that the finance systems, there are more men in finance. It is just, I mean, there's lots of people trying really hard to change that and to readdress that balance. And it is hard. It is hard for people to really put themselves in the shoes of others. It is hard. It's tricky. It's always tricky. So when we were pitching our product, it was really difficult for people to really understand. But that's why you need to have your strong narrative, because you need to show them what's going on. You don't need to tell them, oh, people need this product. You need to show them the evidence. Because it is going to be hard if you're pitched into a room full of male investors and they don't necessarily have that experience of what you're talking about. And for us, like, people would say to us all the time, they'd be like, we used to have like a tally chart on the board whenever someone said it. And they'd say, well, if nobody sees it because it's under their clothes, why does it matter? Why are you trying to make it look pretty or glittery? Like, why does it matter how pretty it is? So we just used to have a stock answer, because you'd be surprised how many people would say that. It, like, at least once a meeting, some person would say that. And we would say, well, you know, I've got a tattoo you can't see, but I like it and it's there for me. And actually, for us, the most important person in this whole story is the woman that's wearing the product. And she has to see it and touch it and handle it every single day. And we want her to feel not happy that she's got to wear it, but just more it needs to be more desirable to wear. It needs to be something differently about, and not constantly reminded about medical issues or coming appointments, or, you know, all these different things. That woman who sees it every single day when she chooses to wear it is the most important person in this story. And you, as an onlooker, you don't see it, because that's fine. But that doesn't mean it doesn't deserve to be a really beautiful object that somebody can like.
It's like that age-old, like, women are there to like please men and look a certain way for men, and it's absolutely, like you say, it's not about that. Like, you almost want it to be something that, like, you could take it and be like, oh my god, look how cool this is, like, show it off a little bit and not be embarrassed that it's kind of frumpy or medical. Like, they've just totally missed the mark by asking that kind of question.
People that have said those things, they haven't realized what they've said until after, when they've really thought about it. And I think it is really important where there's kind of something that underlies the conversation, some underlying assumption. People and their lives are quite tricky, because almost you have to make assumptions in some ways to get about your daily life, because you can't know the individual circumstances of every single thing, because your brain would explode. So you have to make some assumptions in daily life. So when it's an assumption like that, you need to be brave enough to challenge it, and you need to have your, I keep saying narrative because it's my thing, but you need to have your story, you have to have your narrative, you need to have your evidence there at the tip of your tongue, so that you can not re-educate almost, but you can challenge that in a productive and fair way, and give people a chance to reflect on what they might have said and why you would disagree with them. And if you can do that in a really controlled and measured way, you can do that empowers that person to think about changing their mind and their perspective, then that's a really important thing to do.
Yeah, totally. We had a pitch last October for the Scottish Edge Fund, and like, luckily for us, 4 out of the 5 judges were women, so we were like, yes, like, this, you always can get more success pitching to women. And then when there was one man, and he was the only person that asked, okay, so this is like targeting like women, non-binary and intersex people, like, what about me? Like, what about a man? What are you going to do for me? And I was like, well, I won't say his name. I was like, well, like the whole point of our business is that we're specifically addressing female focused needs or non-binary. Anybody who identifies as a woman, we want to target them. And a lot of the stigma that they specifically face, men typically don't face it. So, you know, if we were addressing your needs and theirs, it does dilute our business message a little bit, and you don't face that same amount of pressure. I mean, they just didn't, like you say, like when you explain it like calmly and rationally, they don't have something to come back with because what you're saying is true.
Yeah. And you can, like I said, if you give people the space to reflect on their comments and what they might have said, then I think that's the best thing to do, just to give people space, because on the whole, people don't try to make other people's lives difficult, I find. You know, you have to give people the benefit of the doubt because they say something or it pops out. And they're even if they're supposed to be really super professional and know what they're doing, sometimes things happen, and you need to be able to give them space to reflect and the evidence to think about their opinion and the opportunity to maybe change their mind or to be challenged slightly. And I think as long as you do that in the right way, that's the main thing. But it is fine. I would also say that for any women out there or anybody out there that's looking at starting a business that is focused on women market, then you have a target market, and that's fine. You do not have to please everybody. You do not have to have products that are universal all the time, because if you're solving a pain point, if you've identified a pain point for a group of people, that is their pain point, and it's fine that they own that pain point and that they've told you that that's a problem, and that's okay. And then your innovation solves or makes that pain point better for them, then that's what you do. I mean, there's no reason to try to make it all more complicated than that. And if you can express that and you can tell people that that's what you're doing, then that's super, super important.
I suppose I'm very curious, Sam, what is next for We Wear Booth? What's on the horizon?
So we've been over the lockdown when I still wasn't working for Boost, and I was working all these other jobs. Over the lockdown, we also ran a £70,000 Innovate UK project, which was lovely. And that innovation project was about digital tools to support women to better support women to access products that are available to them. And we are hoping to carry on. It's not at a launch ready stage yet, but we're still developing that. So that's really exciting. So for me, there's been like a magic triangle of all the stuff Boost has been working on. And obviously the breast shapers, the shaper products, they're like one corner of that little triangle. And then the other corner of the triangle is like the service, like the experience of being somebody who wants to wear these products, the service that you might get. And we operate a kind of co-design or human-centered design approach. So we actively encourage women who wear our products or who are interested in our products, or people who might find them useful, anybody who might find them useful, to actually contact us to try a product. If it works for them, then that's great. But if they have other things, so if they say to us, oh, I really like the product, but I'd rather it was like this, could you do that? Then we incorporate these things into our future design challenges, and we have a product development line for the shaper products that really responds to people's feedback. And quite often we can make a custom breast form, or we can make something bespoke for somebody because of the feedback that people are giving us. So the shaper product's there, but that service bit is also really important. Then the third part of that is the boob holder that you put your boobs in. So we've been more about that. So we do work with some amazing lingerie brands. And we don't have the facilities here to do lingerie, and lingerie is really expensive to get into as an industry. So what we've been doing is, and swimwear. So what we've been doing is just really making sure that we're partnering with other small, quite often female-founded businesses, usually people who've had first-hand experience of breast cancer in some way, and working with them so that our products align, because we don't necessarily think that women in business, but there's no need to be siloed. There's no need to be on your own. What we need to do is start these sort of eco revolutions as a community, bringing all our products together so that the women who need them can access them and really see what's out there, and that we're all supporting each other to survive and thrive, because those big massive chain companies that don't pay minimum wage to their workers, like all of that is no good for the world. That is not sustainable. The world cannot carry on like that. So a little revel working together at our grassroots levels as we're starting up our little businesses, if we can kind of, it's a bit like ants, isn't it? If all the ants are working together, then what they can produce is like massively bigger than the sum of each one ant. And I think, but as in a way to take on the big people like Marks and Spencer, you know, or really big, or Primark, or wherever, take on really big corporations that maybe aren't doing things how we would like them to do for a sustainable world, or for the women that need these products, then we can all work together. So the garment bit's really important to us, but what's more important, we're not making things ourselves. We thought about it for a little bit and we've investigated it, but what we're doing mostly is reaching out to these other networks of other small businesses and really working really closely with them.
It's so true, and I think we've actually found that like we've had really good experiences so far. We went to like Egg, where we met you, Edinburgh Gossip Girl, which is like a compilation of female-led businesses, and we've been to Femtech summits and stuff, and all the women have been so eager to help and like share resource and insight. Nobody's been like, I mean, I work in a male-dominated field. I'm in commercial, and people can be a little bit more competitive and cagey. So it's been so nice. And you're right, like, we shouldn't be threatened by people in adjacent industries, because you can learn so much and actually help build each other's businesses up just more than you could do on your own.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think women are good at doing that, about building those networks, about parking the competitiveness for the greater good, for just thinking, how can we better support other women? Like, if I've got a customer who's had an early menopause because they've because of their chemotherapy treatment, and that happens a lot, is your product at Gloria, is that product going to be really good for that woman? And how can we let them know? Because women's health is such a big deal, and women are so good at making do. We found this with our women, with our customers, they're so good at making do, or getting on with their lives, even though things aren't as comfortable or aren't as nice. As women are quite often just getting on with it and don't necessarily say anything, and or find their own ways to get around the problem. That's just their individual way of getting around the problem, and they don't always realize that everybody else has the same problem that they do. And I think that was a bit like with my mum when we started this journey. I just kind of assumed that was just my mum. She finds this really uncomfortable, and that's just like the boob that she's been given. She just doesn't want to wear it. But actually, when we started talking to lots of women, we found lots of women felt the same way, and we knew that there was an opportunity to do something different. And it's a bit like your product as well. These women's health is such a multifaceted thing, and very interdependent. And actually, anything that can make an improvement to women's health, or to make their life just a little bit easier, I think is really important.
Yeah, it's definitely the end goal, isn't it, for all of us? Like, we all kind of share the struggle, can relate, can't we?
You were looking into potentially going into the US, like breaking out over there.
Yes. Oh, it's hard though. It's really hard. So we've got a US patent pending at the moment. It's expensive. It's good. We've had conversations with people in the US, and we do sell to the US on our website, and we do get quite a lot of orders from women in the US. So it is a really interesting market for us. We're really exploring it. We're actively looking for partners in the US at the moment, sessions with a few people, and I'm hoping to go. I'm actually going to Canada. I hope I'm going to Canada at the end of June. Yeah, fingers crossed, to do some meetings in Canada and North America with some people to see sort of how we can collaborate again. But even then, when I was thinking about these meetings, like, my natural instinct was to contact other women who run small companies and say, hey, I'm in Canada, should we go for coffee? And I found that quite interesting, actually, because on paper you should be like, yeah, I'm going to go big and I'm going to go to America, I'm going to try and get meetings with all these like really big players and do all this thing. And what I found, my gut instinct was just like, oh, I found that woman on Instagram and she runs a really cool bespoke bra company, and why don't I just contact her and see if she wants to go for a coffee? And I think that's where I feel much comfortable. So even though we're talking about going to America, I would probably just naturally approach it in the same way I've approached development with partnerships in the UK. I feel like that's the way I naturally want to do business. So maybe it'll just be the same kind of thing. There we are.
It probably feels like much more organic, doesn't it? It feels like a much more like personal, like easier way to connect, isn't it? And kind of align your kind of both your goals, I think.
The one thing I thought was super interesting that you had told me about that I didn't know, and I can't remember what you called them, but the people who professionally write fundraising applications.
Grant bid writers, yeah.
Yeah, because I just had no idea it was a thing, and like maybe everybody knows and it's just me that's been a mug, but...
Not at all. So one thing that I say to people a lot is there's a difference between having somebody coaching you and having somebody doing it for you. And for people who are starting up a small business, we know it's really hard. And we've already talked about the issues with financing, and it is really tricky, really, really tricky. And people are often put off writing a grant application or a funding application or a funding bid because of the amount of work that's involved. And they might know what to put in the form. They might not understand some of the questions properly. They just might find it really, really difficult. What I would suggest is you try and find yourself some coaching or some support. So a grant bid writer, sometimes they can charge quite a lot and they might take a fairly decent percentage out of the money that they raise you. So if you're successful in your bid, then they might take some money out of that. And I really don't like it because it can mean that just the people that can afford to pay for that kind of service are the people that are successful with bid writing or with grant funding, because they've paid somebody to do it completely for them who does it day in, day out as their main job. Now, I have, over the years, I should hold my hands up before anybody who knows me might point this out. I have been paid occasionally. I don't tend to get paid very much, but I've been paid occasionally to support people with their grant applications. I don't write things for people necessarily. I might help them with redrafting if they get really stuck. But because the thing with these things, I've talked all the way through this about narrative. You, as the business person who's passionate about your project and your product, you are going to write a better application than somebody else who's writing about your product, because you're gonna trust me, I know it feels really daunting and it feels like, no, I can fill in those forms, it'll be awful. But once you get going and you get used to it, if you can find somebody to coach you or support you to get that done, but not to do it for you, I think that's the best thing. Because there are people out there, they will take percentages of your money if they're successful in raising you some. I think, well, that's fine, that's great, because I've raised 80 grand and they've got 10% of it, but I've still got the rest, and that's really good. But actually, I think people need to be more confident and they need to be more empowered to do these things for themselves, because you can't always pay somebody to run bits of your business for you. You need to know your stuff inside out. You need to know your narrative. You need to know, if you were at a pitch, you couldn't pay somebody to pitch for you to investors. You have to do that. And actually, quite often, having a really good narrative and a really good project idea for your grant application is very similar to how you would approach a pitch deck or pitching to investors. And if you don't know it well enough to write it yourself, then perhaps it's going to be quite difficult for you to actually deliver that project. So what I do and what I have done is just support people through that process, having learned how to do it myself over the last few years, but with the aim that hopefully after they've done one or two and we worked on it together, that they might not need me anymore, and they can go off and feel much more empowered and much more confident to do those things for themselves.
Yeah, so good. You're almost like, there's such a difference between like somebody employing someone because they have the cash. Like if you have money, you can make money, right? That's like a classic. Whereas like you're actually helping coach people into coming into their own, which is so much more beneficial and fair as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it's better for the grant funders. In the longer term, it's better for the grant funders because they know that they're going to be giving the money, which is often public funding and has to be fully accounted for, to the businesses that are really going to benefit the most from it. And the funding that they give is going to be something that's delivered effectively, because if I've had a client once who had a grant writer write their bid and they had no idea what their project was really about because the grant writer just kind of made some of it up. So you need to, if you're in control of it and you own it and you're really fully immersed in that process, it might take a lot of time, it might take a lot of effort, it might be totally out of your comfort zone, but running a business is like that anyway, and that's just another aspect of something. But there is support out there. There's people like me, but there's also people like who have the Edge advisors in the UK that can help you. They're always around. Like Innovate UK, if you ever look at their bids, they're one of my favorite. Bring up the helpline if you get stuck. There's usually just somebody on the phone that can help. You know, it's not difficult, and it doesn't get marked against you because you've asked for help. In fact, it's a bit of a, they would rather you did it better than just muddled on. All these kind of things available, that means that you're growing your skills and you're really driving and taking ownership of your own business. And I think that is really important for small business owners.
What we do at the end of each podcast is we've been asking like our previous guests to write like a little note to their previous self. So just because we're covering all different topics, and from sex work to menopause to entrepreneurship, it can be anything related to you. So we'll take it offline, like we'll kind of catch up with you over a phone call or email, and we'll write that down. But we'll probably just say to you now what our previous guests wrote down to see if that resonates with you. The idea is just basically to try and normalize all these kind of like internal doubts that we have, and just to show that we all kind of have some of the same stigmas. So our previous guest was our friend called Savannah, who is a cam girl. So we talked all about how she does cam work and kind of what she's come up against. And we asked her just about what was something that she kind of wishes she could have told herself, which actually from your story, it seemed to correlate quite well from your personal story you told us earlier. So she said that she wished she could tell herself not to compare herself to others in terms of timelines and life achievements, specifically not going to uni or feeling like she wasn't where she was meant to be on her own path at that time. So is that something that like you have any thoughts around? I think that's
really important. I just think everybody has their own trajectory, and to do what they need to do at the time when they need to do it. I mean, I'm nearly 40 and I've had a few careers. I've never felt like I was in one pathway. Everything's been very organic and just evolved for me, and I've really embraced that. And I think that when you're young, it's really easy for people to say, quite innocently, people will say to you, oh, what do you want to be, what do you want to study, what trajectory do you think you're going to go on? And I think it's fine not to have one. And I was quite lucky in a way, because I had, as I shared earlier, those experiences where basically people were just assuming I'd never have a trajectory anyway. There wasn't any expectations of me ever doing anything because I was too ill, never do it. And you never do anything really anyway. So that gave me the freedom to do whatever the hell I liked whenever I wanted to, because it was kind of liberating for me not to have those expectations, not to have people saying to me, oh, well, what are you studying at uni then? What kind of career do you think you're going to have? What kind of pathway do you think you're going to have? Because people didn't want to say that to me, because everybody always was told that I was too ill. So it's kind of, for me, that was liberating. For her, that was a different thing, because people would say to her, what's your pathway? What are you going to study at uni? What are you going to do this? And I feel it's shaped by the fact that I didn't have those kind of expectations. So it's kind of cool. Does that make sense, or does that sound a bit weird?
No, it totally does. It totally does. I think honestly, Sam, I think from like, and you've probably heard this so many times before, but like it is genuinely like inspirational, like what your business and what you're planning to do for those women. Like, I mean, we're brand new to this, and I think it's just like so interesting meeting like women like you, just not just from like doing it as a female entrepreneur, but just who you're trying to target and how much they deserve that time and investment into them. Like,
We should all, Isla, we should just all be entrepreneurs. We don't need to be female entrepreneurs. We're just here and we're going to kick ass regardless. So they can all, like, you know, just part with us, and we'll all be like part of the boardrooms, and we'll all be part of those meetings. You know, and I still get people saying things like I went to deliver a talk at a university, and everybody thought I was a student, like at some point, you know, and you get all these assumptions. I just take it as a compliment, really. I take it as a compliment. Or I get into meetings. I used to do a lot of sort of funding meetings with the local town council to try and make things a bit better in the local town after the lockdowns and things. And I'd go into meetings, and people would just like say things like, "Oh, what shop do you work in then?" and things like that, because you're a younger woman, you must work. I mean, it's just things like that. I think people aren't trying to, but if we can re-educate, if we can normalize that there's women in positions of power, women who have influence, women who know what they're talking about, and that we can just trust that they're going to do something amazing in the world, then I think that's the way to move on. And you know what? The best way to do that is to educate your children and get your children on it. I can remember just one more story really quick, because I know I'm taking up a lot of your time. When my son was little, he went to his cousin's house, and she had, his cousin had loads of little baby doll things, and he put these babies in a pushchair, and he was pushing the pram along. And somebody, you know, older man in the house said to him, like his great uncle said to him, "Oh, what are you doing with those? What are you doing with those dollies, child?" And he said, "Well," he said, "I am looking after my babies because their mummy is at work." And he was probably about 3 or 4, and I just went, boom, yes.
so nice to speak to you. Every time I speak to you, I'm inspired. I'm like, I need to speak to you.
That's literally what it is.
This is why I have a juice bottle here, because I talk too much and then I get crazy throat. So if you see me sipping, I'm sorry. But I get so carried away. I get opportunities to talk about it, and I'm just going, oh.
No, that's what's called passion, Sam. That's passion. That's what it is. Like,
never lose it.
Oh no, I think genuinely, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to us, because I mean, it's been great. I feel like I've got fire in my belly. I'm ready to.
You've got to remember, never on your own. There's always there's a community of women around, and you can connect on LinkedIn. You can find people. You can just talk to the next women in the supermarket. You know, just reach out and say hi to people, because people are doing this all the time. They're running businesses, especially through the lockdowns. People have side hustles. They've had ideas. And we need to support each other to make those businesses grow into real, proper, amazing things that they deserve to be. So that's what we want to do.
Cool. I look forward to the future. I really do.
I know. Well, have an amazing weekend, and I'm sure we'll speak soon. We're coming to Cornwall for a trip, whether you want.
We'll be there.
Yeah, come and visit.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Have a great weekend.
Bye.